The UK only produces about 1% of the world's CO2. So people say, well, why are we bothering about EVs, wind farms, or clean energy when China and the US are the real polluters? Well, here's the truth. Cutting emissions isn't just about saving the planet in the next 50 years or so. It's about saving lives in the UK today. Air pollution is killing tens of thousands of people every single year, and EVs are part of the solution. Welcome back to EV Unplugged. Today, we're digging into the real reason behind the UK's push to ban petrol and diesel cars, and it might not be what you expect. Yes, climate change is part of it, but the real driver, the one that's really affecting us right now, is health. My health, your health, our children's health, and possibly our grandchildren's health. So let's get straight into the facts. Around 50,000 premature deaths every year in the UK are linked to air pollution. The main culprit is something called PM2.5, or a microscopic particle that comes from burning fossil fuels. These particulates or these particles are so small that they bypass our body's natural defenses, getting deep inside the lungs. Once there, they can reach the bloodstream, and then they can go anywhere they want, including the brain. And the health impact is already visible. Over the past 3 decades, asthma has exploded in the UK. Back in the 1970s, asthma affected less than 10% of people. By the late 1990s, rates had jumped to 20 to 30% in some groups. Today, in 2025, about 5.4 million people in the UK are on some kind of treatment for asthma, myself included. Every year, we see over 60,000 hospital admissions from asthma attacks. Deaths are rising too, up by more than 14% since 2014, reaching 1,465 deaths in 2022. And in early 2025, GP visits for asthma attacks surged 45% higher than the previous year in 2024. That is a shocking increase, and it is linked directly to air pollution on our streets. Whether you believe climate change or not, the fact is, it is happening. This isn't about climate change models or predictions for 2050. This is about kids growing up with stunted lungs in 2025, about people developing asthma or heart disease earlier in life, and thousands of families losing loved ones way, way too soon. This is the silent killer in our cities, towns, and villages. Now let's connect the dots to EVs, whether you like them or not. Petrol and diesel cars don't just emit carbon dioxide or CO2, they emit nitrogen oxides and particulate matter, the stuff that directly and has scientifically been proven to damage our health. Diesel cars are the worst offenders. Older models in particular release far more toxic particles than most modern petrols and EVs. Critics love to claim EVs pollute as much through tyre and brake wear, but studies from the OECD found that EVs actually produce around 11 to 13% less particulation pollution overall than petrol and diesel. Why? Regenerative braking. EV brake pads can last up to 100,000 miles, whilst petrol cars have to have theirs changed maybe once every 20, 30,000 miles. That is a huge difference. Yes, EVs will release brake dust, but we don't use our brakes that often. And here's the one fact that nobody can argue with. EVs don't have exhaust pipes. No exhaust pipe, no pollution. It is as simple as that. When people point the finger at China saying, what's the point of us switching if they don't? They're missing the bigger truth. Yes, China produces about 30% of global CO2, but that doesn't excuse what's happening here at home in the UK. Let me give you some numbers that might hit closer to where you live. Newer diesel cars are far less dirty than the old ones, but the difference is still huge. Back in 2015, a typical diesel car's nitrogen oxide emission was a factor of 0.635 grams per kilometre. By 2022, thanks to greener engines, though regulations, they had dropped to 0.182 grams per kilometre. That's a 71% improvement. But the legacy of older, dirtier diesel vehicles is still very much present on our UK roads. How many people do you know that still drive an old, dirty diesel and go, I get 59 miles to the gallon, me, I'm saving the environment? They're not. They're getting more miles to the gallon. Their exhaust is still emitting extortionate amount of pollutants through the tailpipe, way more than what newer diesels do. And well, EVs don't, but they are still emitting a huge amount of pollutants through their tailpipe. And that is affecting me, you, and anybody else around them. Meanwhile, many urban areas in the UK are breathing air with PM 2.5 concentrations twice or more what safe levels should be. The UK's regulatory standard is 20 micrograms per cubic metre. But the World Health Organization's guidelines state it should only be 5 micrograms per cubic meter. That means that people are often breathing in 4 times more pollutants than what scientists consider to be safe. So when you hear debates about percentages of emissions globally, those are important. But what matters even more day to day is the quality of the air that we all breathe. Because even if your car is EU standard, if you're stuck behind older diesels in traffic, you're still being exposed to nitrogen oxides, PM 2.5s and other pollutants way above safe limits. That is the truth about it. So back in December 2020, a landmark court case in the UK made headlines. A young girl named Ella Kissi-Debrah, who lived in London's South Circular Road, became the first person in the UK to have air pollution listed as a cause of death on her death certificate. Ella was just 9 years old. She suffered from severe asthma, and the coroner found that exposure to excessive nitrogen dioxide in PM 2.5 levels from traffic near her home contributed directly to her death. That case was a wake-up call. It proved that toxic air isn't just statistics or models. It's something that can claim lives here in Britain in our own local communities. Now imagine how many other families are silently suffering the same fate, but without the same attention. Every day, parents walk their kids to school on polluted main roads. Every day, millions of us breathe particles from car exhausts without even realizing the long-term damage. This isn't about the future. It's about protecting lives right now, right here in the UK. So the next time someone says, why should the UK bother? We're only 1% pollutant. Well, here's your answer. Because air pollution is already here. Because 50,000 people a year in the UK are dying early from dirty air. Because asthma cases are climbing, hospital admissions remain sky high, and deaths are still increasing. Because switching to EVs, cleaning up our energy and reducing exhaust fumes isn't just about the planet. It's about protecting ourselves, our families, and our future health. And let's not forget, air pollution isn't just about asthma. It's directly linked to heart disease, strokes, which are 2 of the biggest killers in the UK. Polluted air makes blood thicker, raises blood pressure, and increases the risk of heart attacks. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or COPD, which traps people in cycles of breathlessness and then hospital visits and administration. Lung cancer, which still claims thousands of lives every year, even in non-smokers. And now even dementia. Recent studies show long-term exposure to polluted air increases the risk of cognitive decline. Every one of these conditions adds pressure to an NHS that is already struggling with record waiting lists and treatment delays. Cleaner air means fewer hospital admissions, fewer emergency cases, and fewer families waiting desperately for healthcare. This isn't about saving the climate in 50 years' time. I am not going to be around in 50 years' time. It's about saving lives right now in Britain. Thank you for watching. And if you found this video eye-opening and educational, please hit and like that subscribe button and share it with somebody, especially those that think EVs are just about climate change. They're not. They're about saving lives and easing pressure on the NHS that we all depend on. And I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.